Tonight on Politics Now, what's on the mind of Latino voters? We break down some new polling on Nevada from Emerson College. Vice President Kamala Harris visits Las Vegas to campaign for Democrats, the main campaign issue she's focusing on. Plus, big deadlines looming for our water supply, the cuts being recommended now, and the big ones coming in the very near future.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
Very much for joining us here on Politics Now. I'm John Langler. New insight into Nevada's Latino voters. Research from Emerson College shows the economy is the most important issue. Now, Latinos make up about 20% of Nevada's voters. It's a crucial part of our population that could swing the midterm elections one way or the other. As with most things political, it starts and ends with the economy. In the Emerson College poll, 37% of Latinos think the economy and inflation are the most important issues. Housing is a distant second, followed by something else. Interestingly, Latinos don't think either party is best to deal with it. 32% don't trust Democrats or Republicans to navigate the country's economic challenges. 23% lean towards Republicans on the issue, 21% Democrats.
We live in this country, in this county, in this state, in this city, and we know that every time we go to the store, the prices seem to be higher and higher and higher.
Fernando Romero leads Hispanics in Politics, the oldest Latino political group in Nevada.
I don't see too many speaking on the economy, and I don't see those that do just how we're going to be able to solve that particular matter, the problem.
The indecisiveness stretches into party support and presidential approval. Emerson College's polling found 36% are neutral on President Biden's performance. 34% are negative, 30% positive. It's more decisive for former President Trump. The new poll shows 47% of Latinos in Nevada have a negative view of him. 30% are neutral, 23% are positive.
It's not a matter of party, it's a matter of what the parties are doing or not doing. The Democrats are addressing what some of our concerns are. The Republicans are not.
Among Nevada Latinos, voters and non-voters, 42% are neutral on Democrats, 49% on Republicans. It's a sign both parties have to work on their message in the months leading up to November. We'll keep an eye on those numbers, certainly, as we get closer to the midterms. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris was in Las Vegas this week. She campaigned for Nevada Democrats on abortion rights. The vice president started, though, with a speech to the Steelworkers Union here in town. Then she held a round-table discussion with Nevada Democrats, including Attorney General Aaron Ford and Senate Majority Leader Nicole Cannizzaro. Ms. Harris focused on making abortion a central election issue.
Another very important point on this issue is that to stand for the proposition that the government should not interfere in the most intimate, private decision a person can make about their body and their future, to stand in support of that does not require one to abandon their faith or their beliefs.
Vice President Harris's visit was quick. She left in the afternoon for a New Mexico campaign stop. Now, the spokeswoman for Republican Nevada gubernatorial candidate Joe Lombardo had a reaction to the vice president's visit. In a statement you see on your screen there, it says, "Between Nevada's astronomical inflation rate and punishing cost of living, Nevadans are desperate for economic relief and competent leadership. Yet all Steve Sisolak can give them is a visit from Kamala Harris." Nevada has the most permissive abortion laws in the country. Other states are passing more restrictive abortion laws, and that is forcing women to come here in some cases from as far away as Texas for medical care. David Charnes spoke with Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada Executive Director Lindsay Harmon.
What does these reproductive rights protections, what are we seeing here in Nevada when it comes to restrictions in other states? Are people coming here to seek these services?
We anticipate that we will see a pretty large influx of patients coming in from states where, especially bordering states like Idaho and Utah and Arizona, as they start to go dark. We already have seen a large influx of patients. About half of our patients in our 3 health centers here in Nevada are now out-of-state patients.
Why do you think that is, that people are already coming here, when I assume there are some providers in some of those states now, but the fear for them obviously is that the as you mentioned, that they will be unable to provide based on state laws. So why do you think we're already seeing that influx?
Well, I think first it's important to note that most of the patients we're seeing are from Texas, where that 6-week ban was put in place, and that is before most folks know that they're pregnant. So that's a majority of the patients. I think the other half of that is people are really scared right now. I think there is, you've seen the media coverage of some of these cases that are now coming to light. And so patients are terrified, and they're terrified not only to access care in their state that could be, potentially ban that coverage in, the coming months, but also because there's been a lot of conversations around medical records and privacy and who will have access to that information and the civil penalties and, this kind of vigilante culture out there in these ban states is terrifying people. They're concerned that their neighbors and friends and family could potentially turn them in for seeking access to care. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of folks, travel across state lines, even, before some of these bans go into effect.
Is there a worry, for what you do every day, that there could be a national abortion ban, and what would that effect have on Nevada?
There are a lot of things that can be done at the state level that also would kind of maybe not interfere with the statute, but certainly would make it more difficult for folks to access care, especially because we're worried about these patients that are coming in from out of state and the cooperative nature that some states are, participating in across state lines. I think that to your point, and it's really critically important to remember that Adam Laxalt in particular is running for Senate. So we care about his vote at the federal level, and that he will represent Nevadans in a way that, the voting population is determined is the way to go. And we are, watching these federal bans, these restrictions on funding, and there's just so many ways that you can get at this issue that I think it's naive of candidates to pretend that they don't have a role to play here, both at the state level and the federal level.
And again, that was Lindsay Harmon with Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada. The White House is pushing Congress to move quickly on President Joe Biden's major spending package. It has already passed the Senate, and the House is expected to vote on this on Friday, though they hadn't yet by the time we taped this program. Hannah Brandt takes a closer look at this legislation.
The Inflation Reduction Act is getting a lot of praise from President Biden.
A whole range of things that are really game changers for ordinary folks.
It makes a big investment in climate programs and has provisions to bring down health care costs. But Republicans say the $740 billion price tag will make inflation worse, not better.
Whenever you want to keep borrowing more and more money from our grandchildren, keep printing dollars, it's going to be inflationary.
Senator Roger Marshall says the bill will drive up oil costs, kill jobs, and disrupt supply chains.
Hardworking Americans are going to feel the impact of this tax and spend bill.
White House economic advisor Jared Bernstein disagrees.
So Republicans are just blowing smoke.
He argues the package pays for itself with provisions like a new 15% tax on wealthy corporations, and says many pieces of the bill will cut costs for people, like the new $2,000 out-of-pocket cap on prescription drugs for seniors.
Those people start saving $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a year. Clearly disinflationary.
He also points to analysis from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which says the bill will actually raise extra revenue for deficit reduction.
When you're reducing the budget deficit, that's disinflationary.
Some of the measures won't take effect immediately, but the White House insists overall this will make a difference.
Now, some of it's not going to kick in for a little bit, but it's all good.
And that was Hannah Brandt reporting. A portion of the money will address drought conditions in the Southwest and along the Colorado River. $4 billion will go towards things like dam safety and water recycling. $300 million over the next 5 years goes to drought contingency planning on the Colorado River. $250 million of that goes to conserve 100,000 acre-feet of water per year. For comparison, the states have to announce between 2 and 4 million acre-feet worth of cuts next week. Despite being dubbed the Inflation Reduction Act, most people don't think that's what it's going to do. An Economist YouGov poll found just 12% of Americans think this is going to reduce inflation. 40% think it would increase inflation. 23% think it won't do a thing. Another Biden administration official was in Las Vegas this week. The head of the EPA visited on Thursday. During a trip to Lake Mead, Michael Reagan touted money going to the Colorado River and efforts to fight drought. He says most of the money will be given out in the form of grants to state and local water agencies.
The best thing that EPA can do is listen to the people on the ground, get resources in their hand, and put these solutions to work. We don't have a moment to lose.
Some companion bills are also aimed at upgrading research about drought on the river here in the Southwest. Next on Politics Now, stopping unemployment fraud. Congressman Stephen Horsford tells us about his new bill aimed at fixing the unemployment system. Plus, former President Trump's home raided, the reaction from Capitol Hill, and what the FBI was
Welcome back to Politics Now.
More security for Clark County School District campuses. At a school board meeting this week, 11 high schools were chosen for upgrades all across CCSD. The changes range from about $60,000 worth of changes to $1.5 million at, again, different schools. They include security cameras, fencing, and single-point entries. And one parent says she's glad to see steps being taken to keep her kids safe, but she wants to make sure all schools and all students are protected.
There shouldn't be any one more child that is getting more safety than another, whether they're in this zip code or another, or whether they had a crime incident last year or not. Every student in Clark County should be safe.
This all comes about a month after similar security upgrades were announced over at El Dorado High, which is getting $26 million invested into security there. You'll remember a teacher was attacked and sexually assaulted allegedly on campus last school year. Clark High School is also getting $100,000 in new infrastructure. This week, trustees also approved a financial settlement with Superintendent Dr. Jesus Jara. CCSD agreed to pay his legal fees. Last fall, Dr. Jara claimed members of the board retaliated against and harassed him before he was fired. A month later, the board rescinded the termination. Dealing with drought on the Colorado River, housing, the economy, they're all issues on the minds of voters, and this week we spoke with Nevada's Democratic Congressman Stephen Horsford, one of the Democratic congressmen, and we started with a discussion on his proposal to try and cut down on unemployment fraud. Let's talk about a measure that you've put forward with regards to unemployment fraud. We've seen PPP loans. We've seen so much money flush into the system and people struggling through the pandemic. Tell me about your measure and what you're hoping to achieve.
So I've introduced the GUARD Act. It's guaranteeing unemployment insurance and addressing the deception that's occurred with people's identities being stolen, small businesses being targeted by these criminal rings. It's something obviously we experienced during the height of the pandemic when we had some of the highest unemployment in the country. And I heard from constituents who were affected both by their loss of their identity as well as the delay in getting the benefits that they were otherwise eligible for. So this is not unique only to Nevada, but we unfortunately experienced some of the worst of it.
Let's switch gears a little bit to another issue that people have been dealing with before the pandemic, after the pandemic, the issue of housing. I know later today there's going to be some discussion of that you're involved in. On a federal level, what can you and Congress do to try and address the housing needs that we see all across southern Nevada all the time, and you probably see it all across the country?
So I've introduced another bill called the HOME Act, the Housing Oversight and Mitigating Exploitation Act. I was born and raised here, and so again I've experienced the growth that our region has had. But what I know recently is that rental rates have gone up nearly 30% in the last couple of years. And when I did research to really dig into what was contributing to this, what we found is 1 in 3 homes in parts of my congressional district are now owned by these out-of-state corporate speculators. Companies who've come in, paid cash, they are now pricing out Nevadans, veterans, seniors, first-time home buyers, young people, because they simply can't afford to buy a home when someone's purchasing it from cash. On top of that, these corporations are also evicting people at higher rates if they are renting the properties, and they have a higher rate of not maintaining the maintenance of those rental properties, which lowers the value throughout the entire neighborhood. So my bill would empower HUD to be able to go after these corporate speculators, address market manipulation where it occurs, find them, and then take the fines and put them into the National Housing Trust Fund to actually develop more affordable housing.
What kind of discussions are happening with the other stakeholders on the Colorado to adjust how much they pull from the Colorado if, everyone keeps saying Southern Nevada and Nevada is doing its fair share?
Well, it's not only about putting investment into mitigation of drought. It is about negotiation with the other users and the allocation of water that other states get. We're doing both. The Southern Nevada Water Authority General Manager is involved in negotiations as we speak around ensuring that Nevada continues to get our share of the water that's necessary. But we also need the investment because the climate crisis is real. Drought and wildfires are occurring. There are things that we can do to mitigate it or to address the water shortage, but it's going to take the resources necessary.
We also spoke with the congressman about the Inflation Reduction Act, and you can watch the entire interview at 8newsnow.com. More water cuts are on the horizon. The Las Vegas Valley Water District is considering a trio of new rules. The first limits decorative water features on the Las Vegas Strip with a few exemptions. The second cuts 1/3 of the water golf courses are allowed to use, and the third would put in tiered water rates. Essentially, the more you use, the higher the cost goes. A vote on those plans could come in October. Henderson and North Las Vegas would have to pass similar rules on their own. Former President Donald Trump's home raided. Next on Politics Now, the reaction from Capitol Hill and a little more insight on what the FBI may have been looking for. Plus, a judge quickly throws out Joey Gilbert's lawsuit claiming he won the Nevada Republican gubernatorial primary. His reason for doing so
watching Politics Now.
This week, Attorney General Merrick Garland addressed the FBI's execution of a search warrant at former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Now, Garland didn't say what the search warrant specifically said. However, the New York Times reports it had to do with documents not handed to the National Archive. The Washington Post says it's connected to nuclear weapon information. Mr. Trump did confirm the raid, but not what they were looking for. Garland says he personally signed off on the warrant.
First, I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly. Where possible, it is standard practice to seek less intrusive means as an alternative to a search and to narrowly scope any search that is undertaken.
President Joe Biden says he was not told about the search ahead of time. Here's more on this from Alexandra Limon from our Washington, D.C. bureau. What's been the reaction on Capitol Hill?
So from Democrats, we're not hearing a lot. They're saying they don't know much about this investigation. They only know what's been reported publicly, the same things that the public is hearing. We even heard from the White House on this, and they said that President Biden was not given a heads up or alerted ahead of time by the DOJ or the FBI that that raid was going to happen. So Democrats, what they are saying, though, is that they believe that no one is above the law and that if President Trump, former President Trump, did remove any documents that shouldn't have been removed from the White House and move them to Mar-a-Lago or other places, that this investigation should be able to unfold the way any other investigation would happen. Whether or not he's a former president, they say, is irrelevant because nobody is above the law. Now, Republicans, we've heard quite a different reaction. While we have heard some agree that no one is above the law, they're pretty skeptical about this. They wonder if this could be politically motivated. They've questioned, not only the motivations, the timing of this as we head into the November elections. We've heard some, like House Leader Kevin McCarthy, call for investigations of the DOJ, congressional investigations. And Senator Hawley even called for the Attorney General to resign. I should point out, though, that as of now, what we have seen so far and what's happened so far that we know of, there isn't any real indication that something like the Attorney General resigning is, a realistic thing that would happen. And there appears so far, at least, to be no reason for that to happen.
Alex Limon from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. Nevada Republican Senate candidate Adam Laxalt said in a reaction to what took place this week, quote, "We don't live in a third world country. We live in America." He says today's raid, it was early this week, of course, the raid of Mr. Trump's home is just another example of the growing weaponization of our federal agencies left by the left, while people like Hunter Biden live freely. His opponent, Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, has not commented yet. Joey Gilbert's lawsuit claiming he won the gubernatorial primary election on the Republican side has been thrown out by a judge. Gilbert claimed that a math equation proved he won when, in fact, he lost by about 26,000 votes to Joe Lombardo. Gilbert's attorneys had asked for a recount with only paper ballots. A Carson City judge ruled against them this week, and we'll see where it goes from here.
and vehicles.
In What to Watch, cuts to our water supply. On Monday and Tuesday, we'll learn just how much of our Colorado River water allotment will be cut and what that could mean for mandatory cuts to your lawn or maybe even your pool. Plus, on Tuesday, Clark County commissioners could move closer towards the first pot lounges in southern Nevada. Approving the rules for giving out licenses is on the agenda, and after that, companies will have to apply and then get approved to open those licenses, or open those lounges rather. We could see the first ones close to the end of the year. We'll follow that and everything else in politics right here on 8 News Now. We'll see you next week. Take care.